The funny thing about humor theory, how theories on humor can help better understand and create jokes. All right, let's look at a few jokes. And what's the deal with comedy? Like, what's the deal with airplane food? Kind of like that. Um, at a young party, a wife admonished her husband. That's the fourth time you've gone back for ice cream and cake. Doesn't it embarrass you? Why should it? Answered her spouse. I keep telling them it's for you. Why don't pirates take a shower before they walk the plank? Well, they just wash up on shore. And a pair of cows were talking in the field. One says, "Have you heard about the mad cow disease that's going around?" "Yeah," the other cow says. "Makes me glad I'm a penguin." Here's another joke for you. A teenager brings her new boyfriend home to meet her parents. They're appalled by his haircut, his tattoos, his piercings. Later, the girl's mom says, "Dear, he doesn't seem to be a very nice boy." "Oh, please, Mom," says the daughter. "If he wasn't nice, would he be doing 500 hours of community service?" Most people will laugh at these jokes, but why? With this most recent joke, it stems mostly from the naivete of the girl who doesn't realize that his community service isn't voluntary, but rather is to atone from some bad deed or deeds he has done. Often, we implicitly understand relatively complex jokes without much thought and find them funny, but when asked to explain why they're funny, we often find it much more difficult. This is where theories of humor can come into play. They attempt to explain different mechanisms that trigger humor and better explain why different things are funny. By better understanding how and why we find things funny, we can better craft jokes and interpret jokes people have made, which is much more useful than you might think. There have been many different proposed theories of comedy that people have created over the years, but there are three in particular that are the most mainstream known to most people. Those being superiority theory, release theory, and incongruity theory. Superiority theory deals with humor that arises from a sense of superiority felt towards people or situations and tends to be a more aggressive style of humor because it is very targeted towards a person or group of people that act as the butt of the joke. If the theory is viewed as a comprehensive theory that attempts to explain all manner of jokes as stemming from a sense of superiority, it fails miserably. However, many people argue that it is in fact just a broad type of humor and that the theory only attempts to group together similar types of humor and explain those. However, that really doesn't explain a large amount of jokes, and so even if that is the assumption, it's still a very weak theory, and there are plenty more fish in the sea. The second theory is called release theory, which proposes that laughter is really a release of nervous energy through the muscle contraction of laughter. Most explanations of the theory are pretty vague and a little inconclusive, and also a pretty big leap. There are instances of laughter explained well by this theory, such as awkward or nervous laughter that aren't really caused by things that are funny in the conventional sense. But again, if this theory is supposed to explain all different types of humor, then it's a joke. I said it's a joke. And yet another theory is called incongruity theory, and is probably one of the most promising theories that attempt to explain all manner of jokes. Incongruity basically says that when we hear or read anything, we are making predictions and assumptions about what it is we're currently reading. And when those assumptions are upended and proven to be not the case, that incongruity between our expectations and the reality we find ourselves in causes us to find humor in it and laugh. Many jokes rely on this phenomenon. Here's an example of one. A young husband with inferiority complex insisted he was just a little pebble on a vast beach. The marriage counselor, trying to be creative, told him, "If you wish to save your marriage, you'd better be a little bolder." Now, this joke relies on the phonetic ambiguity between boulder, B-O-L-D-E-R, and boulder, B-O-U-L-D-E-R, which sounds the same and are both accessible interpretations, especially if the context is there. Even though this theory can explain many different types of jokes, it is a little too broad. There are many kinds of incongruity that are not humorous, and there are also jokes that are funny that are not funny due to any incongruity. There is not just one type or style of humor, though. There are several: affiliative, aggressive, self enhancing, and self defeating. Each of them has their own place and their own effect, but being familiar with all of them is always a good idea. Affiliative humor is characterized by jokes that everyone might find funny, and its goal is to bring people together and create a sense of fellowship. This style is likely one of the most useful to become adept at for making friends and strengthening relationships. Aggressive humor is characterized by more mean-spirited jokes that have a specific target or group, and, for example, most types of jokes relating to superiority theory or under its category are aggressive styles of humor. Not everyone likes this type of humor, and some may laugh, but to hide their nervousness and or uncomfortability. Self-enhancing humor is trying to find the bright side of things and laugh at yourself, and is characterized by jokes that make you the target of the joke, but in a good-natured way, like finding the bright side of life, sort of. Self-defeating humor involves jokes that target yourself, but in a more mean way, and are often used by people being bullied so that they are the butt of the joke before others have the opportunity to put them down. This, however, can be a very psychologically unhealthy style of humor, but used in moderation, it can still be effective. All of that being said, is there an even better theory on the horizon that could potentially explain a lot more types of humors and why we find certain things funny and others not? Well, I certainly think so. I mean, that's why I set up this rhetorical question. But yeah, I think there is. Let's look at it. That theory is called benign violation theory, and is a relatively recent development in humor theory. The basic explanation is that for many jokes, they are violations. They are funny because they are violations, but are not too much or too little of a violation. An example where this is clear is with moral violations. If somebody has a certain moral ideal and that ideal is violated, that would usually cause them to be upset and maybe offended. However, if the violation is small enough and almost seems silly, but is still a violation, it can instead be quite funny. On the reverse end, if it is too innocuous or anodyne, then it can just often be boring and not funny in the least. However, we don't always find things funny, and there are different reasons for why that might be. One potential explanation is that something was either too little of a violation and unfunny, or too much of one and is upsetting to the individual. Striking this balance of violation somewhere in the middle, in between the two, is what tends to be most funny, but that is not the only possible reason. Another reason is certain things aren't funny is because people don't have the necessary background to understand why they're funny. A basic example of this is jokes that hinge on the incongruity between two separate meanings. If one of those meanings is inaccessible, so, the person not knowing the other meaning of the word or not being primed for it in that interpretation in that context, then it's not really funny. It's just a sentence or a short story. That's why, when making a joke or a meme, it is always important to give enough context within the joke to facilitate the humorous interpretation, or for memes, if it's a derived meme that's based on a combination or alteration of a meme, to expose them to the generic ancestor memes first that spawned that one you're looking at so they have the proper context. These two memes here are good examples of this. So on the left, we have the first meme where it is a guy saying, "Man, I'm so hungry." The horse kind of looking at him with this look, and then the bottom, "How hungry?" Now this is based, I think it's really funny. It's based on the idiom I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. And so it's kind of deconstructed where it's like somebody saying hungry and then the horse is asking how hungry, implying that if he's hungry enough, well, maybe he's hungry enough to eat a horse. That's the horse. So that's kind of where that comes from. But this format has become so popular that it has spawned different derivations, different alterations of it, such as the one on the right, where many of you might not understand this, but there's this old video, this old meme of I baked you a pie. Oh boy, what flavor? Pie, pie, pie. And it kind of goes like that. It's just kind of silly video, whatever. And but that is just kind of overlaid over here, and so it just kind of is there to make a reference to that video, so people who know that, and a lot of memes are just series of this sort of thing where there's something that has context for this thing, and then that meme is derived into a new meme that has a different, and it's just all a mess sometimes. So if you're not in that, if you're not involved in that, oftentimes they will be completely incomprehensible to you. So what I was like I was saying, it's important to give that context when you're making a meme or making a joke to for it to be understood as funny. Some of you might be wondering why is any of this important? And in some ways, it's not. In some ways, it is. Humor isn't just a fun little silly thing that doesn't really have any impact. It's actually a very powerful tool that everyone can and I think should use whenever they can because you can make new relationships with new people very quickly by cracking jokes and you know getting on the good side of people using that affiliative sense of humor to kind of build a bond between people, strengthening relationships, friendships you already have, the same thing. uh, Breaking tension, like if there's kind of an awkward situation, breaking making a joke can help, release that tension. Other people release that tension. Sometimes you need to release that tension, otherwise it's very, very uncomfortable. And just coping with life in general. Sometimes life sucks. Sometimes life is really not the best, not the greatest. So being able to have a sense of humor about it, laugh at yourself, laugh at other people a little bit and not a mean way, it's very useful and it can help save a lot of strife in your life. So being able to do this, all make all sorts of jokes and have different styles of humor can be very useful and can make you quite the popular individual as well. And that's always a good thing. But anyways, that's why this is important. Yeah, you should use it. You should learn it, make some jokes, have some fun. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. See you later. But not literally. Y- Yeah.